Hi GCSE drama students, hope you are well. This is lesson 2 of drama. I hope you enjoyed lesson 1, maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but I hope you watched lesson 1 and you learned something, which is the main thing. So we're going to carry on with looking at section A of the exam paper and really looking at stage space again. Now I've covered the areas of the stage, now we're going to look at pros and cons. Now if you remember at the end of lesson 1, I asked you to have a think about the pros and cons of each type of staging. We're going to go through them now. I'm going to add a couple of different types of staging on as well. What I want you to look at is whether you got any right, whether there's any that you missed, any that you didn't think of, and then really have a look at the extra ones that I'm going to add in. You will definitely be asked a question on staging and stage space, like what type of stage is in the diagram below. So you need to be able to identify it and know what it is. So, looking now. These 4 types of staging was the ones that we talked about and looked at pros and cons. Hopefully you remember which is which. What I want you to do is pause the video for a second and just write the names down and write the definition. So what is the definition of that type of stage? Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to do that now. So a proscenium arch stage is defined as an audience, a stage with an audience on one side. Theatre in the round staging is a stage with audience on all 4 sides. A traverse staging is a stage with audience on 2 sides, and a thrust stage is staging with audience on 3 sides. So hopefully you got that and you know that now. So, pros and cons. This was the slide we looked at last time, and asking you to discuss the benefits and disadvantages of the type of staging below. So, we'll start first with proscenium arch staging or end-on staging. So the end-on is just without the frame around the stage. There's a lot of information on these slides, so I will skim it and give you some key facts. Please feel free to pause and have a more read over, put some key terminology down the side as well, so things that you might want to have a look at. Now, it's not all things that will definitely come up in the exam paper, but when you are writing devise and logs, and for the devised unit, these are some key terms that you may want to use, so just have a little look at them as well. So, a proscenium arch, really popular type of staging, it's a really common type of staging. One massive pro is that you are visible to the audience pretty much wherever you are on stage. Obviously, set and scenery allowing, you are visible to the audience. Now, this is really good in Brechtian performances. Now, Brechtian performances, we have what is called a fourth wall. Now, the fourth wall is the imaginary wall that is in between the actor and the audience. Now, when an actor is on stage and you directly address the audience, maybe walk out onto the apron of the stage, this is called breaking the fourth wall. So when you break the illusion that they're not in this imaginary world with you, when you make them aware they are at the theatre, that is breaking down the fourth wall. Okay, so Stanislavski, naturalism, he will want that fourth wall there. He will want you to imagine there's 4 walls to that staging, and that is where you are. Now, Brecht likes you to break down that 4th wall, but very naturalistic performances will most commonly use a proscenium arch stage. So this type of staging gives everyone in the audience a good view. Everyone can constantly move around. You have areas for set, wings, so you can go on and off the stage. Some negatives to this are sometimes it lacks the emotional connection that actors can have with an audience, and they can't get really intimately involved. It limits the genre perhaps you can do on this type of staging, so you might not do an alto performance, making the audience feel uncomfortable on this type of staging. Okay, next one, in the round staging. So theatre in the round, really different type of staging, one not many of you will have used before, but definitely want to give a go. This massive pro, as is there in green, it places the audience so close to what's going on, and it makes you feel really involved in the performance, makes you feel really intimate with the actors and what is going on. So it really does give you a sense of being involved in what is happening. And if that is your aim as an actor, to get the audience really involved and really with you in that storyline, really nice type of staging. There are lots of things to consider, however, with using this, and lots of downfalls. So I'll only pick up a couple here. But you will have your back to the audience at some point all the time, because you cannot physically be facing all of the audience at once. So that is a massive negative to it. Entrances and exits are made through the audience, so very difficult to put them in your blocking. So that is something to definitely consider, and not much set can be used. You can't have any scenery, any backdrops. So that is a big negative of this type of staging as well. Okay, number 3, a thrust stage. Thrust stage, really similar to proscenium arch stages. You've got quite a lot of stages up and down the country. You still have a thrust stage here. It's really one of the main positives of this type of staging, as it says in green. You get the intimacy of being involved in the audience, because you can physically walk into the audience almost. But you still get that backstage area. So with Theatre in the Round, you haven't got a backstage to go off into very quickly. Whereas a thrust stage you can, and you can still have your scenery and set going on behind you. One of the considerations for this type of staging is the fourth wall must be maintained on multiple sides of the audience. So you have got more things to consider. It's not as straightforward as the audience are in front of me. The audience are around the side of you as well. So that is something to consider, and some negatives of a thrust staging. Okay, the next one. So we've got a bit more about in the round staging there. What I'd suggest to you is you pause the slide now and have a little bit of a read through that. Okay, that's just highlighting some of the things that we said earlier, just a little bit more detail for you. So if people wanted to be a bit more of a read on that and have a little bit more of a look at that, that just gives you a bit more information. A traverse stage, as it says there, this is good for creating an intimate atmosphere and close to the audience. It's a very unusual type of staging to use. You won't see it in many performances. Because you've only got the two entrances and exits. It's quite a long way, depending on how many of your people in your audience there are. It's quite a long way to enter and exit. So you can't have much staging on this, and again, you will have your backs to the audience at some point during this type of staging. Okay, a bit about a rake stage here and other types of theatre. So a rake stage, as we said, is a stage where the back of the stage is lifted, and it's quite common in older theatres because if you haven't got a tiered audience, it can be difficult to see, and it gives you a greater perspective. Okay, other types of theatre, you'll see some pictures in a bit. Flexible theatre, sometimes called black box theatre. You could argue the drama studio at Fernley is this, because basically it's an empty boxes painted black. No fixed stage, no fixed seating, and it can be altered to suit the needs of what we want. So you could do any type of staging in there, so it's very flexible. I'll let you have a read of profile theatre if you want to pause the slide. Okay, really interesting here, theatre. I was saying before, we don't really see a lot of traverse theatres because it's a very difficult type of theatre to have. But this one is really interesting. Obviously, housed by the National Railway Museum, the Signal Box Theatre, and as you can see there, an image of when this is being used. So it can be really, really powerful, but it needs to have the right production to go on in a traverse theatre. Okay, promenade theatre and site-specific theatre. These are really interesting types of theatre. The promenade theatre, as we said last lesson, they can follow the audience around. Now, site-specific theatre, you can take the audience to different sites. Any way you'd like, really. It's very unconventional, and it keeps the audience involved and on their toes, and they're wondering what will happen next. If you really want to give your audience an experience, a really immersive experience, site-specific is a very interesting way to do that. And you can do that in your device performances. There's no reason we can't do any of these types of theatre in your device performances at JFC. Okay, so some pros and cons to promenade theatre. There's obviously no divide between the actors and the audience. They walk around with you. You can't say, oh, stand there now, because you are involved, you are acting, so you can't put that in there. Actors can enter from anywhere and perform anywhere, and it creates a really intimate atmosphere. One little question here, as you can see in that picture, with one promenade performance of Romeo and Juliet, the opening fight scene took place within the audience. They started fighting within the audience. So have a pause there and have a think about, why do you think that would have been effective? Okay, so promenade theatre is a description again. So the audience follows the action on foot, moving from one location to another. Again, just a slide there on the pros and cons. Like we said, you won't have any sets, you'll really rely on the weather. The one big issue with site-specific promenade theatre is if it's windy outside. If you've chosen a day where it's gale force winds, there's not a lot you can do about that. So a lot of sound will be lost with that. Okay, so end-on staging, flexible staging, environmental theatre. So very different types of theatre there, and something we've touched on before. Here are some images now. I want to get onto this. Black box staging, as you can see, and flexible theatre. A bit bigger than our stage at Fernley in the drama studio, but you can see that setup, and it's very similar to what we've got at JFC. Okay, here's a couple of other ones now. So we've got open air theatres, absolutely amazing view there for a theatre. You'll find these, I mean there's one in Cornwall, somewhere, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, one in Cornwall, there's some abroad. If you go to Kilworth House, they've got an open air outdoor theatre, really interesting spaces, and if you get a chance to go to one, definitely recommend it. Amphitheatres, Greek theatres, this is where a lot of theatre takes its origins, and you can still go and visit them today. So, couple of questions I've got for you here. So, number one, when performing in the round, which of the following do you have to consider? Let's have a read of them. Okay, number two, what type of stage is shown below? So is it a thrust stage, a cross arch stage, or a traverse stage? I think I'm moving, there we go. And then question three. What type of stage is shown below? Is it a promenade stage, a cross arch stage, or theatre in the round? Okay, so going back, number one is A. You have to change your position very frequently when you're performing in the round. Question two, that type of stage in the diagram is a thrust stage because it's got audience on all three sides of it. Question three, that is a proscenium arch stage. As you can see, the blue arch over the stage. Right, I've got a couple now, I think it's 13 off the top of my head. I'm going to go through and you need to identify what types of theatre there are, and the answers are on a slide at the end, so please feel free to pause that slide and have a look. So here we go. Number one. Number two. Number three. Number four. Number 5 and 6, number 7, number 8, and these are the challenging ones now, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 12, and number 13. Pretty sure that's the last one. Okay, and there are the answers for you guys. So give yourself a mark out of 13, and you just win some pride at getting them all right if you did. If there's anything that you got wrong, you obviously can go back and have a look and figure out why you went wrong on that one. Next week, we're going to move on to theatre roles and responsibilities. It's a totally different thing we're looking at. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are safe and take care of yourselves. Bye.